Dan Trachtenberg, thank you so much for joining me.
Dude, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Dan, this is my favorite Predator movie since the first one. I absolutely loved it. It feels
Awesome.
like it's been quite an uneven franchise, all in all, right? There are some good Predator movies, but there are a lot of quite bad ones. And I just wondered, what, in your opinion, is the secret to creating a truly successful Predator movie?
Well, if we are successful, I would attribute it to returning to the core structure of the original. And that first one was one of the first genre mashups I'd ever seen. You know, it starts out as a military action film and then becomes a sci-fi horror slasher thing, Um, and so this movie also starts out, well, maybe a little less of an action movie, more of an adventure film, and then becomes this other, or evolves into this other genre, or this other genre invades it. Um, so, and I think that's a part of it, and then also the design of the creature. Part of what was so exciting about the original film, was that we were constantly surprised by the movie monster. We saw it cloaked and thought, "Oh my God, is that the movie monster?" And then we saw it decloak and in its biomask, which looked like a space helmet. It was like, "Oh my God, is that the movie monster?" And then that comes off and you finally reveal the iconic design. Go, "Oh no, that's the movie monster." And ever since then, all the movies have never really been able to function that way because we've now seen it. So by redesigning it, we've been able to recapture, I hope, some of that excitement and deliver for even diehard fans of the franchise surprise in what the movie monster has in store for both Nadu and the audience.
What I loved about this movie as well, like you said, the original Predator kind of plays with slasher movie tropes. It's almost like Arnie is a kind of unconventional final girl in that movie. And it really felt like you sort of returned to that. I just wondered, sort of, how did you see this movie genre-wise as you were making it? Did you have in mind kind of horror movie and slasher movie tropes when you were making Prey?
I definitely wanted it to be scary and scarier than it had been previously, and some of that comes down to the gnarlier design of the creature in the movie, but also, for me, it's I consider it more of a suspense. So it's much more about building and releasing tension than it is like getting under someone's skin and scaring them when they close their eyes at night or whatever. That, for whatever reason, for me personally, that's how I view a horror film, or showing something that's deeply traumatizing, and having us go through a set of experiences in a confined story in a movie, and come out the other end of it. So for me, this is much more about playing with the suspense and the tension, and also delivering on a big variety of kinds of action scenes. So I don't love when there's just like the beginning set piece, the middle set piece, and the end set piece. I love when it's something that's sort of wall to wall and isn't just one flavor, not just like a martial arts movie, just giving you that kind of thing. And my favorite John Woo, John Woo movies are all just the gunplay, and this is like, no, this is giving you a whole host of a whole variety of kinds of choreography and sequences to engage with.
And the movie ended up being an R rating, which is great because it really has that kind of like visceral vibe that you want from a Predator movie. I know there was some talk about it being turned into a PG-13, making it more family friendly. How much pushback did you have on it? And were you keen to kind of keep that hard R rating for this movie?
There was never any pushback. It was something we were aiming for, subconsciously. It was like, well, we're making a Predator movie. It wants to be brutal. That's sort of what we enjoy, is seeing this thing's tools and how it's able to use them, and the ways in which people are dispatched, being unique and exciting. The only pushback came from within. Like I'm such a massive Disney file and I'm desperate to make something that could one day end up in the parks somewhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, wait a second, this is a Disney movie. Like, could I somehow make? Wouldn't it be so great for Predator to be in Frontierland? But I couldn't do it. You know, I couldn't figure out a way to do what this movie does and still be like age appropriate for everyone. So, but it was not an ask from Disney. I will say that.
Obviously, this is set in the earliest point in the Predator timeline. It almost is kind of resetting it. I just wondered, what is next for this franchise? Are you going to do any more Predator movies? Are we ever going to get another attempt at an Alien versus Predator film?
All of the things you said sound exciting, but I will say, if there were ever to be, if I had any say in it, you know, if there were to be another Alien vs Predator movie, I think it would want to be further away. But yeah, man, I think it would be awesome if we were able to make more cool Predator movies like this one, for sure.
What I love about this film as well is that it really plays with the idea of who is the real predator, who is the prey, right? And you really do kind of give us this whole spectrum of the animal kingdom. We move up the food chain from kind of rabbits to snakes to lions to bears to human colonialists to obviously the predator. Was that something that you kind of had in your initial conceit?
Yes, we really, you know, that code of conduct from the predator, always looking for the alpha, looking for the strongest hunter, has always been present, but never fully, I think, capitalized on, never fully rendered inside the movies. And I wanted this one, because of what the story, that the journey that our main character is on, really wanted us to fully embrace that premise, and fully realize it and see him working his way up, and to see what he includes and what he doesn't include, you know.
Tell me about the decision to focus this on the Comanche people. And I know that there was some talk originally about whether or not this might entirely be in the Comanche language. I think that there's now a choice where you watch it on streaming, you can watch it dubbed in the Comanche language, right? But tell me a little bit about that process.
Well, we started out in developing the initial drafts of the movie with this awesome woman, Juanita Pataponi, and her nephew Justin Tamakera. Juanita was a Comanche culture bearer, and integral to the formation of this movie. And that's why we dedicated it to her. She's unfortunately passed away in the long time that we spent developing the movie. And then when we hired a producer, we were lucky enough to have found Jane Myers, who is Comanche herself. So we were never like making a movie and then just finding someone to merely consult with. You know, I could not have made the movie without being shoulder to shoulder with Jane and figuring out all of what we had to do narratively, on top of course, what we had to do to make it feel as authentic as possible. That was the fun of this kind of movie, is that it feel as real as can be. So it's not just from like the moral standpoint of like, of course, wanting to make sure that things are accurate and we're not misportraying anything that is that is about real people and history, but also in being able to include elements from a setting that we rarely see, and that even when we do see, we don't often see these parts of it, you know. So Jane had this great idea in mentioning that Comanche and some other Plains tribes never whistle at night. So I think if you whistle at night, it will evoke an evil spirit or bring bad stuff. So there's this scene where Nadu is having a sort of a turning point in her character, and she whistles at night. And that, in that moment certainly lands if you know nothing about Comanche culture. But for For any Comanche watching in the audience, it hits in a totally different, more spine-chilling way. And it's just so great to find moments where there's a crossover between showing something, digging into the authenticity, and showing something about a culture that never gets portrayed, that heightens the genre elements of the movie. Like those don't have to be different things. Those can be a part of the same.
I was lucky enough to see this movie at a press screening in Dolby in London. Incredible visuals, incredible sound. Are you frustrated that this isn't getting a theatre release and it's just going straight onto streaming services?
Yeah, look, on the one hand, it is frustrating because it was, a movie we made to feel giant and epic, and we, finished in Atmos and finished with the highest quality of everything can be, so it could be enjoyed theatrically. But on the flip side, it's first of all, not a lot of people, but people have Atmos in their homes. And I just went through it, but I was just like tempted to do that, and I didn't end up. But anyway, but like, it's awesome that you get to have an experience like this without having to go to the movie theater. And we also could never have done, we're releasing the movie simultaneously, as you pointed out, with a Comanche dubbed version. And that's something we obviously could not have done theatrically. So that's a history making, really special moment, and can only happen because we're streaming. So yeah.
Dan Trachtenberg, thank you so much for joining me.
Awesome. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Looking for more horror content? Subscribe now for more videos like this one, and listen to the Evolution of Horror podcast. Head on over to evolutionofhorror.com.